Hi, welcome to episode 16 of the Woodwind Doubling Channel. Today we're going to talk about how to get started on flute, and hopefully do it on a budget too. Now, flute that I'm playing right there is actually a flute that I sourced on Kijiji a couple months back. I was looking for something to use as a backup. I tend to keep a lot of my main instruments at the Stratford Festival when the season's on, so I like to have a flute around at home as well, because occasionally I'll get some calls to do rehearsals or gigs with big bands where I need to double on flute as well. And it's nice to have something that I can pick up and practice at a moment's notice if I need to. I don't like taking my instruments back and forth. I'm always worried about forgetting some. It might sound like a minor little point, but when you realize that I have about an hour and a half commute to get to the theater, you don't want to be without the instruments you need for the show. So this particular flute is actually parts of two different flutes. I went searching for some kind of an open-holed body. This is actually an Artley body. It's a 5-0 body, so it's C-foot and open holes with an inline G on it. It had a reasonable solid silver head that came with it. It was reasonable but not fantastic. Now, given the fact that I found this on Kijiji and paid somebody less than $100, no big deal. But I did stumble upon a solid silver head joint a few weeks later, which I purchased. Strangely enough, made it up to another Artley flute body. And it's actually a Gemeinhardt solid silver head joint. Now, you know, Gemeinhardt's gotten a little bit of a drubbing for putting out kind of dumpy sounding student flutes, and I've always kind of steered people away from them. But this is actually a decent little head joint, and considering that I also paid less than $100 for this, we're talking about a flute that I can go out and do a gig on for less than $200. Now that's pretty darn good. Now you can certainly find used student flutes, say something like a Jupiter 507 or any of the Yamaha 225, 221 models, things like that. They've got good solid heads on them, good solid bodies. You don't have to worry about the scale. Put it together and learn how to play it and get the most out of that. And then when you feel you really need to move up, go to a solid head on it. Put like a really nice head and you can go far on one of those. It is not a necessity to have open holes. It is not a necessity to have a B-foot, certainly at this stage. There are shows and orchestral pieces that you may run into that call for a B-foot. The one that stems to mind right away is in West Side Story. If you're playing the Read One book, yes, there is a low B in that. But certainly open holes are really not necessary. They're seen as desirable. Most of the professional flutists in North America will be playing open hole instruments, and usually with a B-foot and usually with inline keys as well. So there are lots of options out there. You want to make sure that you got something that's in reasonable shape, and there's a lot of flutes around there. You should be able to find a reasonable deal on an instrument itself. Once you get the instrument in hand, you might want to do a couple things just to enhance the sort of ergonomics and control over it. If you've noticed from my flute videos, I have a little finger rest there. It's actually made by Bo Peep. They call it a finger rest. And it's where your first finger sits against the instrument. Basically, it makes the effective diameter of the instrument a little greater. If you've got slightly larger hands, it's going to make it a lot more comfortable, gives you a place to anchor. The other thing that I tend to put on my flutes, all of them, is a thumb port. Now, this is like a little thumb rest that extends behind the instrument a bit, and it gives you a better platform for your thumb to sit on. I find it helps keep this hand in position better. And certainly when I'm picking it up rapidly in the pit as a doubling instrument, having those two things in place just means I can feel more comfortable more quickly. And time is of the essence when you're changing instruments in a pit. So that's the inexpensive flute setup and a couple little devices to help make it a little more comfortable. But what about the actual playing? How can you get better on a flute? Flute for me for a lot of years was a real struggle, and it's all about getting your air aimed in the right place. And when you understand that aiming your air slightly differently for the different registers of the flute is something that you have to learn, then getting some sort of a little device to help you do that is a really smart idea. And I'll show you. Okay, so this little device here is called a Pneumo Pro. And it's a breath trainer for flutists. And what this little thing on the side does, you can see this little curving thing with the 4 fans. The idea is that when you put this in your flute, and of course it's not going to make any sound, you blow here and direct your air down here for the low register, here for the middle register, here for the upper register. And this is like way out of the park. So you don't want to have this one. That means your air is just going straight across and doing nothing for you. And a lot of people who pick it up for the first time are going to hit that fan dead on and make it spin like crazy. What you want to do is actually make these smaller fans spin. So right now what I'm getting is that second fan and making it and only it spin, and making it spin very fast. If I can keep my air focused so that fan is spinning and at a high rate of speed, that means I'm probably going to have a pretty solid middle register. Likewise, if I can do the same for the bottom fan, I'm going to have a good solid low register, and also likewise there, a good solid high register. It's really nice to have a bit of a visual feedback. I use this in front of the mirror. You can take it out of the flute and just hold it by itself. Certainly with some beginning students, I've done that. Now, they put a little platform here on top of it. The idea is you're supposed to put a coin on it and hold it like that. And if the coin tips off, it means you're holding it at the wrong angle or you're pitched too much like this. I've never really bothered with that. I'm more concerned about getting the air to line up with these. I'm going to try doing a little close-up thing and see if you can get a better view of how I'm hitting the fans with the air. Hopefully that wasn't too up close and personal. So there's a couple tips. Inexpensive way to get an instrument, a good breath trainer so you can get your air direction working. I'd certainly possibly look at something like the art of flute playing, not so much for exercises, but more about it'll get you in a little bit of the mental concept of playing the flute and the mechanics of it and the breath control. Certainly the best thing of all is if you find a decent flute teacher around you and take some lessons to get yourself started, be upfront and say that you're adding it as a double. If they're kind of not impressed, find another teacher. There do exist some flute snobs in the world, and they seem to resent us encroaching on their territory. But hey, if they're not going to play saxophone and clarinet, then they're not going to get the pit work, whereas we have to cover all those bases. So hopefully that's been informative. I'll get back to you in an episode soon with my personal flute setup and show you that. And if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And I'll see you next time on the Woodwind Doubling channel. Thank you.